Hi, everyone. It's Stephanie with the Patient's Story. I hope you are doing well wherever you're joining us from. I am so thrilled to introduce our special guest today, who's going to be sharing quite an incredible story. So without further ado, Bill, I'd like to welcome you and give you a chance to say hi.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And, Bill, we'd love to start these conversations with more about who you are, because as we know, we are so much more than a cancer patient or a cancer diagnosis. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have been in vocational Christian ministry for most of my life. I am retired now. My last posting, I'm a retired Anglican priest. And for the last 16 years, I was the rector of St. Athanasius Anglican Church here in Waxahachie, Texas.
Wonderful. And I know in our previous conversations, I learned a family man through and through as well, which I love to hear. So, Bill, we have a lot to get through, so I really want to start right away. The story starts with kind of a long time with you being misdiagnosed, essentially, being treated for the wrong thing. So it was all the way back in 2018, springtime. Talk to us about your first symptoms. What landed you in the ER?
I went to the ER with anaphylaxis. I swelled up, like a toad and turned red. And the therapy for that usually is some kind of steroids and antihistamines to kind of calm things down. And as it worked, and I noticed when all the swelling in my face reduced, the left side of my neck seemed to be a little thicker than the right. And I'd turn my head and it would be tight. And so I thought, well, that's weird. So we went to my general practitioner, good friend for 30 years. And I said, John, there's something in there, I think. So he mashed around and he said, yeah, Bill, you got something in there. And that led to an x-ray and then a CT. And the radiologist said, yeah, you've got some swollen lymph nodes in your left neck. You better check that out. And that started some diagnostic stuff, needle biopsies, finally an excisional biopsy, and the verdict came back, diffuse large B-cell lymphoma.
So that was a lot. You did a great job of summarizing what must have been actually some weeks of what is happening, right? I mean, it's your thrust. You went in for swelling. You're given steroids, antihistamines. You're thinking, all right, now I can go home and just resume life. At what point did you realize, before you got the diagnosis, that, gosh, this is something serious? And how did you process that?
Okay. Well, my Christian faith helped a lot, obviously. I think actually it kind of sneaked up on me. I'm one of these guys that wants to read all the radiologist reports before I talk to the doctor. And in the first one I read, he used the word malignancy at one point, and I thought, aha, okay. So I asked my good friend, Dr. John, and he said, well, he thinks it's a malignancy. We don't know yet. But he sees a lot of it, and that's what it looks like to him. And that's why he used the word. But he said, let's keep going. And so, but early on, I thought, okay, well, this could be something serious. And as the diagnoses proceeded, it was serious.
The amount of time it took from when you went to the ER till you finally got the diagnosis was a matter of weeks, several weeks at least, maybe almost even.
Right. About a month.
I mean, because it went from April all the way through May, and it was all the way through mid-May at least till you finally got that excisional biopsy, which is when they actually take some of it out so they can go and look at it and study it. Waiting for the results. We often refer to that as scanxiety. So how did you sort of manage through? I know you said your faith is a big part of it, but how did you get yourself through what can be a very anxious time?
Well, actually, I had my plate full of things to do. I had not retired from my work. And so, there was things on that plate. I have 3 living daughters, and at the time I have 5 grandchildren, 4 of them nearby. And, there was plenty to do. I wasn't just sitting around twiddling my thumbs, worrying. I just kept on keeping on. I felt okay. I didn't feel sick. So I thought, okay, we'll just wait and see what comes down the pipe and deal with it when it gets here. And it stood me in good stead to do that.
When he finally confirmed the lymphoma, how did you process it then, really knowing what you had? And how did you break the news to your loved ones?
Oh, I kept my wife and children up to speed immediately, of course. And in fact, we've got a pretty close-knit, extended family, so everybody was on board. And they were concerned, of course. The local oncologist was fairly optimistic. He said, we cut this very early, and it is a version of lymphoma that is quite responsive to therapy. He said the cure rate is quite high for this type of lymphoma, and especially catching it so early. It was only in one spot. We had a PET scan, and that's the only part that lit up. So he was optimistic. He said the standard therapies, there's basically 2. Statistically, they're the same as far as outcomes. You pick. And so I did. And we did it. And it worked. Everything went into remission. We got a dark PET scan at the end of it.
Right. No evidence of disease. Now, that choice I really wanted to ask you about. So he had said you can do 6 rounds or 6 cycles of R-CHOP, which is, we hear that a lot, standard. Or you can do 3 cycles of R-CHOP, this IV chemo, and also 15 consecutive days of IMRT radiation to that spot in the left side of the neck.
Correct.
What got you to go to that second option of doing the mix of chemo and radiation?
Well, I assumed what everybody assumes about chemo, that you just, makes you sick, and I don't like to feel sick. So I thought, okay, well, if indeed it is statistically the outcomes, you can't distinguish them, I'll take the less sicky one. So I did 3 of the R-CHOP and 15 of the radiation, and it seemed to work just great.
Right. I mean, you achieved what we all hope for, which is that PET scan that says no evidence of disease. As we had mentioned, doctors don't like to say cure, especially not then. Right. So it was no evidence of disease, you're in remission, or the disease is in remission. So you are then, yay, everything's good. You went on a 20-day road trip where you drove all around the Southeast.
Yes,
you were feeling good. Okay. Mm-hmm. You were feeling good. What was that follow-up protocol after with your oncologist?
Well, after that, he would see me every 6 months, physically examine me for evidence of swelling lymph nodes, where he could palpate and where he expected things to show up, and nothing ever showed up. I think I had a PET scan about a year later. I've had so many of those. They start to run together. But there was just no evidence of any cancer for the next 3 years.